The dirt under Sophia Zimmerman's knees had soaked up her tears 3 hours ago, and now there was nothing left inside her but a hollow resignation as her uncle's tobacco-stained fingers gripped her arm hard enough to leave bruises. She was 20 years old, and her life was being bartered away for $43 in the spring of 1884, which her Uncle Bernard announced with satisfaction was a fair price, considering the drought had driven up the cost of everything except unwanted nieces. She can cook, clean, and she hasn't caused me much trouble, Bernard Zimmerman said, his voice carrying across the dusty main street of Enid, Oklahoma, where a crowd had gathered to witness the spectacle. A bit scrawny, but she will fill out with proper feeding. Sophia kept her eyes fixed on a dark stain in the dirt, refusing to look at the men who had gathered to inspect her like livestock. Her parents had died of cholera 2 years ago, leaving her in the care of her father's brother, a man whose kindness had evaporated the moment he realized she came with no inheritance. Bernard had spent the last year reminding her that she was a burden, that feeding her took food from his own children's mouths, that she owed him everything for not turning her out onto the streets. $43, a merchant named Wilson said, stroking his gray beard. That is less than I paid for my plow horse last month. Then you overpaid for your horse, Bernard snapped. This is my final offer. Take her or leave her, but I want her gone by sundown. Sophia's stomach turned. She had known this day was coming. Bernard had made no secret of his intentions to be rid of her, but she had fooled herself into believing he might find her a position as a hired girl at one of the respectable homes in town, not auction her off like cattle in the middle of the street. The humiliation burned hotter than the Oklahoma sun beating down on her bare head. I will give you $40, Wilson said. Not a cent more. 50. The voice came from behind Sophia, deep and steady, cutting through the murmur of the crowd like a knife through warm butter. She turned her head slightly and saw a man stepping forward from the cluster of onlookers. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against his faded blue shirt. His hat was pushed back far enough that she could see his face, angular and sun-weathered, with eyes the color of creek water in summer. He looked to be in his middle 20s, maybe 26 or 27, with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly who he was and not caring what anyone else thought about it. $50, the stranger repeated, his gaze fixed on Bernard with an intensity that made the older man take a step back. And that is more than she is worth to you, which we both know. Bernard's eyes lit up with greed. $50 cash? Cash. The stranger pulled a worn leather wallet from his pocket and counted out the bills with deliberate slowness. But I want it known, here and now, in front of all these witnesses, that I am buying her freedom, not her person. The moment this money touches your hand, she owes you nothing. No debt, no obligation, no claim. You understand me? Her freedom? Bernard laughed, a harsh sound that made Sophia flinch. Boy, you can call it whatever you want. Once you pay, she is your problem. The stranger's jaw tightened, but he held out the money. Bernard snatched it quickly, as if afraid the offer might evaporate, and immediately began counting the bills with trembling fingers. Sophia watched the transaction with growing numbness, unable to process that her entire existence had just been reduced to a stack of paper that fit in her uncle's greedy palm. Get up, the stranger said, and it took Sophia a moment to realize he was talking to her. His voice had gentled somewhat, losing the hard edge it had carried when addressing Bernard. You do not have to kneel in the dirt anymore. Sophia's legs had gone stiff from kneeling so long, and when she tried to stand, she stumbled. The stranger caught her elbow, steadying her with a grip that was firm but surprisingly gentle. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw, the faint scar that cut through his left eyebrow. Can you walk? He asked. Yes, Sophia managed, her voice coming out as barely more than a whisper. She had not spoken much in the past few hours, not since Bernard had dragged her from the house and announced his intentions to the first person he saw on the street. Then come with me. The The stranger released her arm, but stayed close as they walked away from the crowd. Sophia could feel dozens of eyes on her back, could hear the whispers starting up like the buzz of angry bees. She knew what they were saying, knew what they would assume about a woman who had been bought by a stranger. Her reputation, what little remained of it, was destroyed. Not that it mattered much anymore. The stranger led her down the street, past the general store and the saloon, past the church with its white painted steeple, to where a horse stood tied to a hitching post. It was a fine animal, a buckskin gelding with intelligent eyes and a well-kept coat. The stranger untied the reins and turned to face Sophia. "My name is Harrison Xander," he said. "I have a ranch about 6 miles outside of town. I am going to take you there, and then we are going to have a conversation about what happens next. But first, I need to know your name." "Sophia," she said. And then, because it seemed important to establish that she had once belonged to a real family, not just to Bernard, she added, "Sophia Zimmerman." "Miss Zimmerman." Harrison nodded, as if filing the information away. "I am going to put you on my horse now. Is that acceptable to you?" The question surprised her. No one had asked if anything was acceptable to her in a very long time. "Yes," she said. Harrison swung up into the saddle with the easy grace of someone who had spent most of his life on horseback, then reached down to pull Sophia up behind him. She settled awkwardly, not sure where to put her hands, until Harrison said, "You will want to hold on. The road gets rough." Sophia wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt. He smelled like leather and sage and honest sweat, and despite everything that had just happened, despite the fear and humiliation churning in her stomach, she felt the first small flicker of something that might have been hope. They rode out of Enid in silence, following a dirt road that wound through scrubland dotted with mesquite and prairie grass turned gold by the relentless sun. The landscape was harsh and beautiful in equal measure, all wide skies and endless horizons, the kind of country that either broke people or made them stronger. Sophia had been born in Missouri, in a town where trees grew thick and rivers ran full, and she had never quite adjusted to the stark openness of Oklahoma territory. "You are probably wondering why I did that," Harrison said after they had been riding for about 20 minutes. "Yes," Sophia admitted. "My mother died when I was 12, Harrison said, his voice even and matter-of-fact. "My father decided he could not be bothered to raise me on his own, so he sent me to live with my uncle in Texas. My uncle worked me like a dog and took every cent I earned until I was big enough to fight back. When I was 17, I left and swore I would never stand by and watch someone else be treated the way I was treated. So when I rode into town today and saw what your uncle was doing, I could not walk away." Sophia absorbed this information, trying to reconcile the hard, capable man in front of her with the image of a frightened boy being shipped off to a stranger. $50 is a lot of money," she said quietly. "I have been saving for 2 years to expand my herd," Harrison said. "I was going to buy breeding stock at the sale next month, but cattle can wait. You could not." The simple statement, delivered without any expectation of gratitude or acknowledgement, made Sophia's throat tighten. She blinked rapidly, willing herself not to cry again. She had already shed too many tears today. "What do you expect from me?" she asked because she needed to know. Men did not spend $50 on a stranger without wanting something in return. Harrison was quiet for a long moment, long enough that Sophia started to regret asking the question. Then he said, "I expect you to decide what you want to do with your life now that you are free to make that choice. You can stay at my ranch as long as you need to figure that out. I have a housekeeper, Mrs. Chin, who lives in the main house. You will have your own room. I will not touch you. I will not force you into anything. And if you decide you want to leave, I will give you money for a train ticket to anywhere you want to go." "Why would you do all that?" Sophia asked, bewildered. "Because you are worth more than $43 in a plow horse," Harrison said simply. You are worth more than everything your uncle tried to reduce you to, and someone needs to show you that. Sophia did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. They rode on in silence, and gradually she became aware of the landscape changing around them. The scrubland gave way to rolling grassland, and in the distance she could see the dark shapes of cattle grazing. A creek cut through the property, marked by a line of cottonwood trees, and beyond that stood a house. It was not a grand house, nothing like the plantation homes Sophia had seen in pictures, but it was solid and well built, with a wide porch and glass windows that caught the afternoon light. There was a barn nearby, painted red, and several smaller outbuildings. It was the kind of place that spoke of hard work and careful planning, the kind of place someone had poured their heart into building. "This is the Xander Ranch," Harrison said as they approached. "It is not much, but it is mine. I have been working it for 5 years now, since I was 21. I run about 200 head of cattle, mostly longhorns, and I am starting to breed quarter horses." A woman appeared on the porch as they rode up, wiping her hands on her apron. She was small and compact, with black hair streaked with gray and a face that suggested she was somewhere in her 50s. Her eyes were sharp and assessing as she looked at Sophia. "Mrs. Chen, this is Miss Sophia Zimmerman," Harrison said as he dismounted and helped Sophia down. "She will be staying with us for a while. Can you prepare the guest room?" Mrs. Chen's gaze moved from Sophia to Harrison and back again, and Sophia saw understanding dawn in her eyes. "I will prepare the room," she said, her English heavily accented but clear. "Come, Miss Zimmerman, you look like you could use some tea and a place to sit down." Sophia followed Mrs. Chen into the house, acutely aware of how she must look with her dress dusty and her hair falling out of its pins. The interior of the house was simple but clean, with wooden floors and whitewashed walls. There was a parlor with a stone fireplace, a dining room with a long table, and a kitchen that smelled like fresh bread and coffee. "Mrs. Chen ushered Sophia into a chair at the kitchen table and set about preparing tea. "Mr. Harrison is a good man," she said without preamble. "He found me in Kansas City 3 years ago when my husband died and I had nowhere to go. He gave me work and a place to live and never asked for anything but honest labor. Whatever happened to you today, you are safe here." "Thank you," Sophia said, her voice cracking slightly. The kindness was almost harder to bear than the cruelty had been. Mrs. Chen set a cup of tea in front of her, along with a plate of bread and butter. "Eat," she commanded. "You are too thin." Sophia ate because it was easier than arguing, and because she realized she had not eaten since breakfast, which felt like a lifetime ago. The bread was good, still warm from the oven, and the butter melted into it perfectly. She ate 3 slices before she even realized what she was doing. Harrison came in while she was eating, having taken care of his horse. He poured himself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, watching her with those steady creek water eyes. "Better?" he asked. "Yes," Sophia said. "Thank you." "I meant what I said earlier," Harrison told her. "You are free to leave whenever you want. But if you choose to stay, even just for a little while, I could use some help around here. Mrs. Chen does her best, but there is more work than one person can handle. I would pay you fair wages, same as I would pay any hired help." The offer was almost too good to be true, which made Sophia suspicious. "What kind of work?" "Cooking, cleaning, mending, helping with the garden, maybe some bookkeeping if you know your numbers," Harrison said. "Nothing you could not do, and nothing that would put you in harm's way. And if you decide it is not for you, no hard feelings." Sophia looked down at her tea, watching the steam rise in delicate spirals. She had no money, no prospects, and nowhere else to go. She could accept Harrison's offer and hope he was as honorable as he seemed. Or she could strike out on her own and likely end up in a worse situation than the one she had just escaped. "I will stay," she said finally. "At least for a while. And I will work for my keep." "Fair enough," Harrison said. He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Sophia shook it. His palm was calloused and rough, the hand of someone who did not shy away from hard labor. Welcome to the Xander Ranch, Miss Zimmerman. That first night, Sophia lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling and trying to process everything that had happened. The room was small but comfortable, with a real bed and clean sheets, and a window that looked out over the darkened prairie. She could hear the wind moving through the grass, a sound like the ocean breathing, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. She thought about Bernard counting his $50, about the way he had grabbed her arm without a trace of remorse, about the men who had gathered to inspect her like a piece of merchandise. And then she thought about Harrison stepping forward out of the crowd, his voice steady and sure, paying twice what anyone else had offered, just so he could set her free. Sophia did not believe in fairy tales. She had learned the hard way that the world was a cruel place and that kindness usually came with strings attached. But as she lay there in the darkness, listening to the wind and the coyotes, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, Harrison Xander was exactly who he appeared to be. The next morning, Sophia woke to the sound of roosters crowing and discovered that ranch life started early. By the time she dressed and made her way to the kitchen, Mrs. Chen was already hard at work preparing breakfast, and through the window, Sophia could see Harrison out in the corral, working with a young horse. "You can help me with the biscuits," Mrs. Chen said, nodding toward a bowl of flour on the counter. "Do you know how to make biscuits?" "Yes," Sophia said. Her mother had taught her to cook when she was young, and even Bernard's wife had put her to work in the kitchen. She washed her hands and set to work, measuring out flour and lard and buttermilk, working the dough until it was just right. Mrs. Chen watched her with approval. "You have good hands for cooking," she said. "That is good. Mr. Harrison works hard, and he needs good food to keep his strength up." They worked in companionable silence for a while, and Sophia found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the kitchen. There was something soothing about the simple, repetitive tasks, something that quieted the anxious voice in the back of her mind that kept insisting this could not last. Harrison came in for breakfast just as the biscuits were coming out of the oven. He had cleaned up, trading his work clothes for a fresh shirt, and his hair was damp from washing. "Something smells good," he said, hanging his hat on a peg by the door. "Miss Zimmerman made the biscuits," Mrs. Chen said. Harrison took one, split it open, and took a bite. His eyes widened slightly. "These are excellent," he said. "Best biscuits I have had in months." Sophia felt her cheeks warm with the compliment. "Thank you." They ate breakfast together at the kitchen table, and Harrison talked about the work that needed to be done that day. He had fences to mend, cattle to check on, and a horse to train. It was clear that running a ranch was demanding work, the kind that required being up before dawn and often working until well after dark. "I have to ride out to the north pasture today," Harrison said as he finished his coffee. "There is a section of fence that needs repair before the cattle find it and wander off. I should be back by early afternoon." "Be careful," Mrs. Chen said, which seemed to be something she said every time he left the house. After Harrison left, Sophia helped Mrs. Chen clean up the breakfast dishes and then set to work on the other chores. There was laundry to be done, vegetables to be picked from the garden, and floors to be swept. The work was hard but honest, and Sophia found herself grateful for it. It gave her something to focus on besides the mess her life had become. Over the next few weeks, Sophia settled into a routine at the Xander Ranch. She woke early, helped Mrs. Chen with breakfast, spent the day working on various household tasks, and in the evenings, she would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the prairie. Harrison was gone most days, working the ranch, but in the evenings, he would join them for dinner and talk about his day. Sophia found herself looking forward to those dinners more than she wanted to admit. Harrison was easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor that often caught her off guard and made her laugh. He treated her with a respect she had never experienced from a man before, always asking her opinion, never talking down to her, never making her feel like she was less than him. One evening, about a month after Sophia had arrived at the ranch, Harrison found her in the garden pulling weeds. The sun was just starting to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, and the air had cooled enough to be pleasant. Mind if I help? Harrison asked, grabbing a hoe from the shed. I do not mind, Sophia said, surprised. She had assumed Harrison would want to rest after a long day of work. They worked in silence for a while, the only sounds the scrape of the hoe against the dirt and the distant lowing of cattle. Finally, Harrison said, You have been here a month now. Are you settling in all right? Yes, Sophia said honestly. Mrs. Chen has been very kind, and I enjoy the work. Good. Harrison paused, leaning on his hoe. I wanted to ask you something, and I want you to know you can say no without any consequences. Sophia felt her stomach tighten with anxiety. What is it? The church in town is having a social next Saturday, Harrison said. There will be food and music and dancing. I thought you might enjoy getting out of the house for a while, meeting some of the other women in the area. I would escort you, of course, make sure no one bothers you. Sophia's first instinct was to refuse. The thought of going back to Enid, of facing all those people who had witnessed her humiliation, made her feel sick. But then she looked at Harrison's face, at the genuine concern in his eyes, and she realized that he was not asking for his own sake. He was asking because he thought it would be good for her. I do not have anything suitable to wear, Sophia said, which was true. She only owned 2 dresses, both of them worn and faded. We can fix that, Harrison said. Mrs. Chen is an excellent seamstress, and I have some fabric stored away that my mother left. She would want it to be used. You do not have to do that, Sophia protested. I know I do not have to, Harrison said. I want to. Say yes, Sophia. You deserve to have some fun. The way he said her name, gentle and certain, made something flutter in Sophia's chest. All right, she said. Yes. The next few days were a flurry of activity as Mrs. Chen took Sophia's measurements and set to work creating a dress from the deep blue fabric Harrison had provided. Sophia tried to help, but Mrs. Chen shooed her away, insisting that she wanted to surprise her. When the dress was finally finished, Sophia could hardly believe her eyes. It was beautiful, with a fitted bodice and a full skirt, trimmed with cream-colored lace. It was the nicest thing she had owned in years, maybe ever. You will look beautiful, Mrs. Chen said with satisfaction. Mr. Harrison will not be able to take his eyes off you. Sophia felt her face heat. Mrs. Chen, it is not like that. Is it not? Mrs. Chen gave her a knowing look. I have seen the way he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching. And I have seen the way you look at him. He has been kind to me, Sophia said carefully. But that does not mean... That man paid $50 to save you from your uncle, Mrs. Chen interrupted. That man treats you like you are precious. Maybe you should ask yourself why. Sophia did not have an answer for that, so she changed the subject. But Mrs. Chen's words stayed with her, echoing in her mind as Saturday approached. The day of the social dawned clear and warm. Sophia spent the morning helping Mrs. Chen prepare food to bring, then went to her room to get ready. She put on the blue dress, pinned up her hair, and looked at herself in the small mirror Mrs. Chen had lent her. The woman looking back at her was almost unrecognizable from the broken, defeated girl who had knelt in the dirt of Enid's main street 6 weeks ago. Harrison was waiting on the porch when she came out, dressed in his Sunday best, his hair neatly combed. When he saw her, he went very still, and Sophia watched something shift in his expression. You look beautiful, he said, his voice rough. Thank you, Sophia said, feeling suddenly shy. You look very nice as well. They rode into town in the wagon, with Mrs. Chen staying behind to tend to the ranch. The social was being held in the church's fellowship hall, and by the time they arrived, it was already crowded with people. Sophia felt her anxiety spike as they walked in, but Harrison stayed close, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, and that simple touch was enough to steady her. Several people stared as they entered, and Sophia heard the whispers starting up. But Harrison ignored them, leading her to a table where several other ranchers and their wives were gathered. Harrison, one of the men said, standing to shake his hand. Good to see you. And this must be Miss Zimmerman. I am Thomas Reed, and this is my wife, Margaret. Margaret Reed was a plump, cheerful woman with graying brown hair and kind eyes. We have heard so much about you, she said warmly. Harrison has been telling everyone how much help you have been at the ranch. Sophia blinked in surprise. He has. Oh, yes, Margaret said. He came by our place last week to look at one of Thomas's bulls, and he could not stop talking about how you had reorganized his whole kitchen and how his bookkeeping had never been so organized. Sophia glanced at Harrison, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I may have mentioned it, he said. The evening passed more pleasantly than Sophia had dared hope. Margaret introduced her to several other women, all of whom seemed genuinely friendly and interested in getting to know her. No one mentioned the incident with Bernard, and Sophia began to relax, to enjoy herself. When the music started, Harrison appeared at her elbow. Would you like to dance? He asked. Sophia hesitated. She had not danced in years, not since before her parents died. I am not sure I remember how. I will lead, Harrison promised. Just follow me. He led her out onto the floor, and Sophia found herself swept up in the music, Harrison's hand warm and steady at her waist. He was a good dancer, confident and sure-footed, and Sophia found herself smiling as they moved together. You are a natural, Harrison said, looking down at her with those creek water eyes. You are a good teacher, Sophia replied. They danced 2 more songs, and Sophia was breathless and laughing by the time they stopped. She could not remember the last time she had felt so light, so unburdened. When she looked up at Harrison, she found him watching her with an expression she could not quite read. Thank you for this, she said softly. For bringing me tonight. For everything. You do not have to thank me, Harrison said. I should be thanking you. The ranch has never run so smoothly, and I have never eaten so well. That is what you pay me for, Sophia pointed out. Is it? Harrison's voice had gone quiet, intense. Is that all this is to you? A job? Sophia's breath caught. She knew what he was asking, knew that her answer mattered. No, she admitted. It is not just a job. Harrison's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Good, he said, because it is not just a job to me either. You are not just hired help, Sophia. You are so much more than that. Before Sophia could respond, someone bumped into them, breaking the moment. Harrison stepped back, dropping his hand, and Sophia felt the loss of his touch like a physical ache. They drove home in near silence, the air between them charged with unspoken words. When they reached the ranch, Harrison helped Sophia down from the wagon, his hands lingering on her waist for just a moment longer than necessary. Good night, Sophia, he said. Good night, Harrison, she replied, and went inside with her heart pounding. Mrs. Chen was waiting in the kitchen, and one look at Sophia's face made her smile. So, she said, did you have a good time? Yes, Sophia said. A very good time. After that night, something shifted between Sophia and Harrison. The easy friendship they had developed took on a new dimension, charged with awareness and possibility. Sophia found herself watching Harrison when he was not looking, noticing the way the sunlight caught in his hair, the strength in his hands, the kindness in his eyes. And she caught him watching her too, his gaze following her as she moved around the kitchen or worked in the garden. One evening, about 2 weeks after the social, Harrison asked Sophia to take a walk with him after dinner. They strolled down to the creek, where the cottonwood trees provided shade, and the water burbled over smooth stones. I have been thinking, Harrison said as they walked, about what I said to you that first day, about you being free to leave whenever you wanted. Sophia's stomach dropped. Are you asking me to go? No, Harrison said quickly. God, no. The opposite, actually. I am asking if you would consider staying. Permanently. Sophia stopped walking and turned to face him. What do you mean? Harrison took a deep breath. I know it has only been a couple of months. I know you have been through hell and probably need more time to figure out what you want. But I need you to know how I feel, Sophia. I need you to know that you have become the most important person in my life. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is seeing you at breakfast. When I am out working, I am counting the hours until I can come home to you. You make everything better, brighter. You make me want to be a better man. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Harrison, I love you, Harrison said. The words raw and honest. I think I started falling in love with you the moment I saw you kneeling in that dirt, too proud to beg even when your uncle was trying to sell you for less than a plow horse. And every day since then, I have fallen a little bit more. I am not asking you to feel the same way, not yet. I just need you to know that you are worth everything to me. Everything. Sophia's tears spilled over, running down her cheeks. I do feel the same way, she whispered. I did not think I could after everything that happened. I did not think I had it in me to trust anyone again, let alone love them. But you have been so patient, so kind. You have shown me what it means to be valued, to be seen as a person and not just a burden or a possession. I love you, Harrison. I love you so much. Harrison let out a shaky breath and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Sophia clung to him, feeling safe and cherished and whole for the first time since her parents had died. When Harrison finally pulled back, he was smiling, and there were tears on his cheeks too. I want to do this right, he said. I want to court you properly, give you time to be sure, and then, if you will have me, I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you, here on this ranch. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want everything with you, Sophia. Yes, Sophia said, laughing through her tears. Yes to all of it. Harrison cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Sophia melted into him, feeling like she was finally home. They spent the next several months in a state of blissful courtship. Harrison was true to his word, treating Sophia with respect and tenderness, never pushing her further than she was ready to go. They took long walks in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. Harrison taught Sophia to ride, putting her on his gentlest mare and leading her around the corral until she gained confidence. Sophia helped Harrison with the bookkeeping, and they would sit together at the kitchen table in the evenings, her organizing his accounts while he read aloud from the newspaper. The people of Enid gradually accepted Sophia, especially after it became clear that Harrison Xander was serious about her. The women who had been kind to her at the social invited her to quilting bees and church gatherings, and Sophia found herself building friendships for the first time in years. Bernard never came around the ranch, which was a relief. Sophia heard through the grapevine that he had spent Harrison's $50 within a week and was now complaining about being short on cash. She felt nothing for him, not even anger anymore. He was a small, petty man, and she had moved beyond his reach. In December, 6 months after Sophia had arrived at the ranch, Harrison proposed officially. He did it on Christmas Eve, in front of the fireplace, with Mrs. Chin beaming in the background. He got down on one knee and presented Sophia with a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother. Sophia Zimmerman, will you marry me? He asked, his voice steady and sure. Yes, Sophia said, her heart overflowing. 1,000 times yes. They married in January of 1885 in the small church in Enid with half the town in attendance. Margaret Reed stood up as Sophia's matron of honor, and Thomas Reed served as Harrison's best man. Sophia wore a white dress that Mrs. Chin had spent weeks sewing, and Harrison wore a new suit he had ordered from a catalog. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Harrison kissed Sophia in front of everyone, and Sophia felt like her heart might burst from happiness. This was her family now, her home, her future. Everything she had lost had been given back to her 100-fold. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. A harsh winter killed some of the cattle, and they lost money. A rattlesnake spooked one of the horses, and Harrison was thrown, breaking his arm. But through it all, Sophia and Harrison faced everything together, supporting each other, loving each other. In the spring of 1886, Sophia discovered she was pregnant. She told Harrison one evening at dinner, and he was so overcome with emotion that he could not speak for several minutes. When he finally found his voice, all he said was, "Thank you. Thank you for giving me everything I never knew I needed." Their son was born in late autumn, a healthy boy with Harrison's eyes and Sophia's dark hair. They named him Daniel, after Sophia's father, and he was the light of their lives. Harrison was a devoted father, often carrying Daniel around the ranch in a sling, talking to him about cattle and horses and the land as if the baby could understand every word. Mrs. Chen doted on Daniel, and often Sophia would find the baby asleep in Mrs. Chen's arms, the older woman singing to him in soft Chinese. The ranch house was full of laughter and love, and Sophia would sometimes stop in the middle of her work and just look around, amazed that this was her life now. 2 years later, they had another child, a daughter they named Rose. She had Harrison's stubborn chin and Sophia's gentle spirit, and from the moment she was born, Daniel appointed himself her protector. The two children were inseparable as they grew, always getting into mischief together. The ranch prospered over the years. Harrison's careful breeding program produced some of the finest quarter horses in Oklahoma Territory, and the cattle herd grew steadily. They hired additional hands to help with the work, young men who Harrison treated with the same respect and fairness he showed everyone. Sophia took on more responsibilities as the years passed, managing the household accounts and often negotiating deals with suppliers and buyers. She proved to have a head for business, and Harrison frequently consulted her on major decisions. They were partners in every sense of the word, building something together that neither could have achieved alone. In 1889, Sophia received word that Bernard had died of a fever. She felt a strange mix of emotions at the news, mostly a profound sadness for what might have been if he had been a different kind of man. She attended his funeral because it seemed like the right thing to do, and she stood at the back of the church with Harrison's hand in hers, saying a prayer for the uncle who had tried to sell her and the cowboy who had declared she was worth more than everything. As the years rolled on, Daniel and Rose grew into fine young people. Daniel had his father's love of the land and his mother's compassionate heart. Rose was bright and curious, always asking questions and wanting to understand how things worked. They both attended school in town, and Sophia made sure they got a good education. Mrs. Chen remained with them, growing older but no less fierce in her devotion to the family. She taught Rose to cook and sew, and she told both children stories about her life in China, about coming to America and finding a new home. She was as much a part of the family as anyone, and the children called her Grandmother Chen. In 1895, Oklahoma Territory was beginning to change rapidly. More settlers arrived every year, and Enid grew from a small frontier town into a bustling community. The railroad came through, bringing new opportunities and new challenges. Through it all, the Xander Ranch remained a constant, a place of hard work and family and love. One evening in late summer, when they had been married for 10 years, Sophia and Harrison sat on the porch, watching the sunset while their children played in the yard. Daniel was 14 now, tall and lanky, already learning to handle the ranch work. Rose was 12, still more interested in books than horses, but starting to show an interest in her mother's business dealings. "Do you ever think about that day?" Harrison asked quietly. "The day I found you in Enid?" "Sometimes," Sophia admitted. "But it feels like a lifetime ago, like it happened to someone else." "You have come so far," Harrison said, taking her hand. "You have become so strong." "We have come so far," Sophia corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you." Harrison lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. "I meant what I said that day, you know. You are worth more than everything. You are my everything." Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. She thought about the girl she had been, broken and hopeless, sold for less than a plow horse, and she thought about the woman she had become, loved and valued and free. I am the luckiest woman alive, she said softly. No, Harrison said, pulling her closer. I am the luckiest man, and I thank God every day that I was in Enid that afternoon, that I was able to bring you home. As the years continued to pass, the Xander Ranch became one of the most respected spreads in the territory. Harrison's reputation for fairness and quality stock spread far and wide, and people came from hundreds of miles away to buy his horses. Sophia ran the business side of things with an efficiency that impressed even the most hardened businessmen in the territory. In 1897, Daniel fell in love with a neighbor girl named Emma, the daughter of Thomas and Margaret Reed. It was fitting somehow that the families who had been friends for so long would be joined by marriage. Daniel and Emma wed in the spring of 1898, when Daniel was 17 and Emma was 16, and they moved into a cottage Harrison and Sophia built for them on the edge of the property. Rose showed no signs of settling down, much to her parents' amusement. She had her heart set on attending a teacher's college in Kansas, and Harrison, though reluctant to see his daughter go, agreed to send her. Sophia was proud of Rose's ambition, knowing how rare it was for a woman to pursue higher education. Mrs. Chen passed away peacefully in her sleep in the winter of 1899 at the age of 72. The whole family mourned her loss deeply. They buried her on a hill overlooking the ranch, beneath a cottonwood tree she had always loved. Sophia planted flowers on her grave every spring, remembering the woman who had welcomed her with open arms and taught her what family truly meant. By 1900, as the new century dawned, Daniel and Emma had given Sophia and Harrison two grandchildren, twin boys who were the spitting image of their father. Rose had graduated from college and returned to Enid to teach at the schoolhouse, bringing with her modern ideas about education that sometimes ruffled feathers but always produced results. The ranch had grown to encompass over 1,000 acres, with a herd of nearly 500 cattle and the finest breeding stock of quarter horses in the territory. They employed 10 full-time hands and additional seasonal workers during roundup. The house had been expanded twice to accommodate the growing family, and there was talk of building another cottage for Rose when she eventually decided to marry. One autumn afternoon in 1902, Sophia sat in the parlor, working on some embroidery while Harrison read the newspaper. They were both in their late 30s now, settled into a comfortable rhythm that came from years of partnership and love. Daniel was managing more of the day-to-day ranch operations, freeing Harrison to focus on the breeding program. Rose had just announced her engagement to a young lawyer from Guthrie, and the wedding was planned for the following spring. Listen to this, Harrison said, looking up from his newspaper. They are predicting that Oklahoma will become a state within the next 5 years. Can you imagine? We have watched this territory grow from nothing. We have done more than watch, Sophia said with a smile. We have helped build it. Harrison set down the paper and looked at her, his eyes as warm as they had been 18 years ago when he first told her he loved her. Do you know what I think about sometimes? What? I think about what my life would have been like if I had not ridden into Enid that day, if I had taken a different route, or delayed my trip, or decided not to get involved. I would have bought those cattle I was planning to buy, and I would have built a successful ranch, but I would have been alone. No you, no Daniel, no Rose, no grandchildren, just me in empty rooms and money in the bank that did not mean anything. Sophia set down her embroidery and went to sit beside him. But you did ride into Enid that day. You did get involved. You changed both of our lives. You changed mine just as much, Harrison insisted. More even. You took a bitter, lonely man who had closed himself off from the world and taught him how to open his heart again. Sophia kissed him softly. Then we saved each other. As the years rolled into the early 1900s, Oklahoma did indeed become a state in 1907, and the Xander family celebrated alongside everyone else in the territory. By then, Sophia and Harrison were in their early 40s, still active and involved in the ranch, but gradually handing over more responsibilities to the next generation. Daniel proved to be as capable as his father, with an even better head for business. Under his management, the ranch expanded further, and they began shipping cattle by rail all the way to Chicago. Emma was a perfect partner for him, managing their household with the same efficiency Sophia had always shown. Rose married her lawyer, a good man named Samuel, who shared her progressive views on education and women's rights. They settled in Guthrie, where Samuel had his practice, but they visited the ranch often, usually staying for weeks at a time in the summer. Rose gave birth to a daughter in 1908, naming her Sophia after her mother, which moved Sophia to tears. The twin boys, now nearly 10 years old, were already showing signs of inheriting the family love of horses and cattle. They spent every spare moment following their grandfather around, pestering him with questions and begging to help with the work. Harrison was infinitely patient with them, just as he had been with his own children. In the summer of 1910, the Xander family gathered for a reunion that included 3 generations. The house was full of noise and laughter, children running through the halls, women working together in the kitchen, men standing on the porch discussing cattle prices and weather patterns. Sophia looked around at all the people she loved, at the family she and Harrison had built together, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. That evening, after everyone had gone to bed, Sophia and Harrison took a walk down to the creek, just as they had done that night 26 years ago when Harrison had first told her he loved her. The cottonwood trees were taller now, and the creek ran a little lower due to the summer heat, but the magic of the place remained. "Do you remember what you said to me here?" Sophia asked, lacing her fingers through Harrison's. "I said a lot of things," Harrison replied with a smile. "All of them true. You said I was worth more than everything," Sophia reminded him. "You said I was worth more than everything your uncle tried to reduce me to." "And I was right," Harrison said. "Look at what you have become, Sophia. Look at what we have built together. You are the heart of this family, the foundation of everything good in my life." "We built it together," Sophia said, echoing words she had spoken many times over the years. "Neither of us could have done this alone." Harrison pulled her into his arms, and they stood there in the moonlight, swaying slightly, as if to music only they could hear. "I would do it all again," he said quietly. "Every hardship, every challenge, every moment of doubt. I would do it all again just to end up here with you." Sophia held him tighter, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. "So would I," she whispered. "So would I." As they grew older, Sophia and Harrison gradually retired from active ranch management, content to let Daniel run things while they enjoyed their grandchildren and each other. They traveled some, taking the train to places they had always wanted to see. They visited the ocean in California, saw the mountains in Colorado, spent time in big cities like Chicago and St. Louis, but they always came home to Oklahoma, to the ranch that had been the center of their lives for so long. In 1915, as World War I raged in Europe, the Xander Ranch continued its steady operations. Daniel was too old to be drafted, and the twins were still too young, so the war felt distant even as its effects rippled through the economy. Cattle prices fluctuated wildly, and there were shortages of various goods, but the family weathered it all with the resilience they had developed over decades. Sophia spent more time in her garden now, growing vegetables and flowers with equal dedication. She had developed a reputation in Enid for her roses, which bloomed in profusion every summer. People would stop by just to see her garden and ask for cuttings and advice. Sophia was always generous, sharing her knowledge and her plants freely. Harrison focused on his horses, breeding for temperament as much as conformation. He believed that a good horse should be a partner, not just a tool, and he trained all his animals with patience and kindness. His methods were sometimes mocked by harder men, but no one could argue with the results. Xander horses were known throughout the state for their intelligence and willing dispositions. By 1920, as the country entered the Roaring Twenties, Sophia and Harrison were both in their mid-50s, grandparents to 7 grandchildren with an 8th on the way. The ranch had been in the family for 35 years, longer than some of the towns in Oklahoma had existed. They were pillars of the community, respected and loved by nearly everyone who knew them. One evening that year, during a family dinner that included 3 generations, young Sophia, Rose's daughter, who was now 12, asked her grandmother a question. Grandma, is it true that you were sold by your uncle? That Grandpa bought you? The table went silent, everyone looking at Sophia. It was not a story they talked about often, though everyone in the family knew the basics. Sophia looked at the young girl, seeing in her the same curiosity and intelligence that had always characterized Rose. It is true, Sophia said quietly. My uncle tried to sell me for $43. Your grandfather paid $50 and then set me free. Why did he do that? Young Sophia asked. Sophia looked across the table at Harrison, who was watching her with those creek water eyes that had never lost their warmth. Because he believed I was worth more than what my uncle said I was worth. He believed I deserved freedom and dignity and respect. And he was willing to sacrifice his own plans to make sure I got those things. But why? The girl persisted. He did not even know you. Harrison spoke up then, his voice carrying clearly through the room. Because I had been in a similar situation when I was younger, and I knew what it felt like to be treated as if you had no value. I could not walk away and let it happen to someone else. And, he added, smiling at Sophia, from the moment I saw your grandmother, I knew she was special. I knew she was someone worth knowing, worth helping, worth loving. Young Sophia considered this, then nodded. I am glad you did, Grandpa. Otherwise, none of us would be here. That is exactly right, Harrison said. The best decision I ever made was stopping in Enid that day. As the 1920s progressed, changes continued to sweep across America and Oklahoma. The ranch adapted with the times, bringing in more modern equipment, experimenting with new breeding techniques, diversifying their operations. But the core values that Sophia and Harrison had built the ranch on remained unchanged. Hard work, fair dealing, respect for all people regardless of their station in life. Daniel and Emma's children grew up and started families of their own, some staying on the ranch, others moving to cities to pursue different careers. Rose and Samuel had 3 more children after young Sophia, and their home in Guthrie became a gathering place for intellectuals and reformers. By 1925, on their 40th wedding anniversary, Sophia and Harrison were both 60 years old. The family threw them a huge party, inviting people from all over the state. The governor sent a telegram of congratulations, acknowledging Harrison's contributions to Oklahoma's cattle industry. The church in Enid presented them with a plaque recognizing their charitable work and community service. But the moment that meant the most to Sophia came late in the evening, when Harrison pulled her aside and led her out to the porch, away from the noise and celebration. The sun was setting over the prairie, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, just as it had done countless times over the past 40 years. I have something for you, Harrison said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Sophia opened it to find a necklace, a simple gold chain with a single pendant shaped like a horse. Harrison, it is beautiful. Look at the back, he urged. Sophia turned the pendant over and read the inscription, worth more than everything. Tears filled her eyes as she looked up at Harrison. You remembered. I remember everything about that day, Harrison said, and I have spent every day since then trying to prove those words to you. You are worth more than everything, Sophia. You always have been. Sophia threw her arms around him, holding him as tightly as she had that night by the creek 40 years ago. And you saved me, she whispered. You saved me and gave me a life I never dreamed I could have. As the 1920s gave way to the 1930s, hard times came again. The Great Depression hit Oklahoma particularly hard, made worse by the drought and dust storms that would come to define the era. Many ranches went under, unable to weather the economic collapse. But the Xander Ranch survived, partly due to sound financial management and partly due to the generosity of spirit that Sophia and Harrison had always practiced. They helped their neighbors when they could, extending credit, sharing resources, offering work to men who had lost everything. They remembered what it was like to have nothing, and they refused to turn away people in need. It cost them financially, but they never regretted it. Harrison's health began to decline in the mid-1930s. He was 70 years old, and a lifetime of hard work had taken its toll on his body. He developed a persistent cough that the doctor said was probably from years of breathing prairie dust. He slowed down considerably, spending more time in the house, though he still insisted on going out to see the horses every day. Sophia cared for him with the same devotion he had shown her for 50 years. She made him special foods to tempt his appetite, read to him when he was too tired to focus on the newspaper, sat with him for hours just holding his hand and reminiscing about their life together. In the spring of 1938, Harrison caught pneumonia. Sophia nursed him through it, barely leaving his bedside, and for a while it seemed like he might pull through. But his lungs had been weakened by years of the cough, and on a warm May morning, with Sophia holding his hand, and their children and grandchildren gathered around, Harrison Xander passed away peacefully. Sophia was devastated by the loss. They had been married for 53 years, partners in every sense of the word, and the house felt impossibly empty without him. But she drew strength from her family, from the legacy they had built together, from the knowledge that Harrison would want her to keep going. She lived for another 12 years, remaining active and involved in the ranch operations until the very end. She saw her great-grandchildren born, watched the ranch continue to prosper even through the difficult war years of the 1940s. She became a respected elder in the community, known for her wisdom and generosity. Sophia Xander died in her sleep in the summer of 1950 at the age of 85. She was buried next to Harrison on the hill overlooking the ranch, beneath the cottonwood trees, where they had first declared their love for each other 65 years before. At her funeral, which was attended by hundreds of people, young Sophia, now a woman of 42 with children of her own, stood and told the story of how Harrison had saved her grandmother from being sold by her uncle. She told it to honor both of them, to remind everyone of the foundation upon which the Xander family had been built. My grandfather saw a woman being treated as if she had no value, and he could not stand by and let it happen, young Sophia said. He paid $50 not to own her but to free her. He declared that she was worth more than everything, and then he spent the rest of his life proving it. Together, they built something beautiful. They built a family, a ranch, a legacy of kindness and hard work and love, and that legacy continues in all of us today. The ranch remained in the family for generations after that, passed down from parents to children, each generation adding their own contributions while honoring the values that Sophia and Harrison had established. The story of how they met, of Harrison saving Sophia from her uncle's greed, became family legend, told and retold at gatherings and celebrations. And on the hill where they were buried, the roses that Sophia had planted bloomed every summer, a testament to a love that had transcended hardship and time, a love that had started with one man's declaration that a woman he barely knew was worth more than everything, and had grown into a legacy that would last forever.